Hello and welcome everybody. It's Chris here from ChristopherHole.com. Welcome to this podcast where we have the supple leopard himself, Kelly Starrett, on the other side of Skype, way over in San Francisco. He is a physical therapist. You may know him, you may not know him, but he's a physical therapist, author, and he does a movement and mobility course with CrossFit. I'm not sure if he does that on his own, but he does it with CrossFit, that I do know. And he is the founder, owner, and proprietor of mobilitywod.com. So if you want to get hold of him, just go straight to the website. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kelly to all the listeners. And what I'd also like you to do, Kelly, is just introduce yourself, give the listeners a little bit of a background, a little bit of sort of who you are and what you do.
Lord, well, thank you so much for having me. What we do, if I had to split I'm a physio coach. If you sat down next to me on the airplane, I would say, people ask, what do you do? I'm a teacher. We get a little more specific and granular. I'm a physio. And then if really you have to pin me down, I'm a coach and performance coach, which means, our gym, we have a physical location, a strength and conditioning center, which is pretty unique in the world. It's called San Francisco CrossFit. And then CrossFit is our model for general physical preparedness. But underneath that, we have national champion gymnasts and national medalists in Olympic lifting. We have a thriving powerlifting program. We see high-level endurance athletes. One of our athletes just, took third in one of the pre-worlds for Ironman. We just have a really amazing hodgepodge, like most, strength and conditioning centers, of moms and dads, elite-level athletes. We started the other half of the business is we started a website a few years ago where we just tried to take the lowest hanging fruit down, where we saw that I was having the same conversations with my Olympians and soldiers as I was with, just the people coming in, mainly that people didn't have the motor control and they didn't have the range of motion required to be normal humans. And so when they tried to apply that to strength and conditioning, it blew up in their face. And when they tried to apply those deficits in technique, and in biomechanics to an actual sport, lo and behold, it looked like a Ponzi scheme where we saw people getting injured over and over again. And, if we just take the running industrial complex, for example, in the United States, 30 million runners in America, 80% of those runners will be injured in a year. That makes running one of the most dangerous sports on the planet. And if you look at the injury rates in running per 1,000 hours, it varies between 5 and 12, which is higher than gymnastics or Olympic lifting. That's higher than almost football. So what we really have to, and that's American football, which is way, way higher. So, what ends up happening is, people kind of get sucked into this vortex of, physio, specialty, MD, and they really have, all someone needed to show them didn't have any range of motion in their capsule, quads were stiff, missing ankle range of motion, things that they should be able to take care of themselves. So we started this, a project to be able to give that information out. And it blossomed into all of this, and then for the last half decade, we've taught a performance course about our model of being able to sort of systematize complex motor function into sort of its constituent parts, and our best practices about being able to address that. So, Cook may talk in patterns, but I talk in sort of basic archetypes of the primary engine joints. And what we see is that, we feel like the modern humans now, we have a really great formal language for diagnostics, and that's called strength and conditioning. Is that everyone knows they need to be stronger. Well, we're always saying, how much stronger do you need to be? If you're a 5K runner, do you really need to clean 180 kilos? I don't think so. So the real question is, how efficient can we get the athlete? We're always looking at weight. We're always looking at nutrition. We're always looking at adaptation areas around hydration and sleep and all those things. But when we've come down to is that people really were able to express extraordinary genetic inheritance without sort of understanding sort of the meta-awareness of why they are able to do what they do and how they got there. So, for example, I'm working with one of the best pitchers, American baseball player pitchers on the planet. And, he's a Cy Young Award winner. And, he saw his mechanics start to decay as soon as he became a pro. Why? Travel, the erosion, wasn't getting the strength and conditioning support, and the struggle for him to figure out what was going on. Am I wearing my hat backwards while I work? And you just play this kind of hopscotch around, and we feel like it's a much simpler idea that, can you do all the things that humans should be able to do, and then can you express that in actual things like getting up off the couch? A box squat is the same thing. And so when we take on, what we are now is, I have spent the last part of 10 years, we estimate we've done about 100,000 athlete sessions at our gym. That's 100,000 hours, which is an insane number of athletes that have come through. And then if you suddenly start to aggregate that into the populations we've seen, we've worked with every branch of the American government, every branch of the military. I've seen dozens and score of universities, Olympic teams, national teams. We've just seen everyone's dirty laundry, and it turns out the shoulder is the shoulder, the low back is the low back. And why are we surprised now when we haven't been able to sort of solve these problems? And you can see where Dr. McGill or Gray start to pull their hair out, because what we're seeing is that people don't have a basic language for these things, and yet we're throwing kids into the swimming pool, we're throwing kids on the pitch, and not only do they not have ankle range of motion, but they don't, they lack the ability to even fall and run with a straight spine. So what we've really tried to do in our education, our seminars, is re-empower parents, re-empower coaches and teachers and athletes to be able to take a crack at it. Instead of waiting for the car to blow up, it seems like it's a lot easier to change the oil. And so that's what we've started to do. And we've had, people we think are ready now. We're living in an epoch where, the information is there for the, Iyengar, the yogi master, just died, right? Like 2 weeks ago. And he was still practicing at age 94. And for the first time, I don't think we're ever going to lose his body of work is actually kept. We can talk about it, and we can see it on the internet. And in the past, I think we've solved these problems many times with many masters. People have thought critically about the condition of the human being, but for the first time, we start to see the interplay of science and technology and sort of being able to keep this information. I really feel like we can make a big change. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to take now the Formula One concept, right? This is the best practice to make the best athletes in the world go fast or lift fast or do whatever they need to do. But one of those practices that are scalable backwards, and then how do we take that information out so it actually matters? Because if sport is really about self-actualization, and I'm solving low back pain in my Olympic lifters, and I see that my footballers are sitting, well, why can't I take that same concept and spin it into moms and dads and solve that problem? Yeah. Because, as back pain is a gigantic problem. Yeah. Just the bladder incontinence industry in the United States is $2 billion. That's like 6 pounds or something like that. But 60 pounds maybe. $2 billion is a ton. And what we're seeing is these are very, very simple problems because the body really hasn't evolved in 10,000 years. You're a little fatter than you were 10,000 years ago, but it's the same structure. So why haven't we got it right? And what errors are we making? And what can we do about it? And that's really what kind of makes us light the fire. Yeah,
that's all along with the message of this podcast, the website, and everything that I teach over in the UK. Because I have been following yourself, Gray, McGill, probably McGill the longest. But
me too.
He's been around for long enough, which is what we need. We need that solidarity, that foundation that he's got. But it's everything that you kind of have said there. My workshop that I teach is called Back to Basics, basically. And as you've been talking there, it's looking at athletes. Where's your pain? How can we correct it? And it's just taking that formula and using it with another person. Because as you've said, although it is a powerlifter's body, essentially the hips work the same, the shoulder works the same, the back works the same. So we can translate those skills across. And I don't know whether it's the guys that I'm teaching, but I teach trainers as well. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I have is taking, let's say, a strength and conditioning trainer and saying, come on, let's look at movement. Let's look at joint range of movement. Let's look at how they're going down. Let's look at their hip flexion. Whereas I just want to pick up that weight and I just want to go. And I think I guess that's my biggest challenge. But it seems like the US may be a year or two ahead, and then hopefully it will filter its way down into the UK.
I think what you bring up is some really interesting points. Is